I really can't believe we missed a second time. How many billions? How many geniuses? How many governments just missed? I just missed. The first time it happened, we laughed. It was a desperate, lunatic, defiant laugh. The shock and silence hung for a moment, and I chuckled. I knew we were really in trouble now. I laughed so I didn't cry. My fellow scientists, who had become my family, started to laugh along with me. Our scrunched-up faces and wobbling knees, the dispassionate view screen and aged beige walls, our desperate public who jeered and joked, it all stared at me. But there was still a little hope, still a part of me that knew we might be able to turn things around. So I laughed, and we all laughed, and we strained our hearts, preparing for more sleepless nights, and scared mothers and fathers who pretended they weren't scared, and we laughed. This time I didn't laugh. I'd seen too much laughing, and it had become grievous to me. If the last miss was cataclysmic, then I didn't have a word for how I felt now. Maybe a sentence could sum it up. No. Perhaps a paragraph. No. Words weren't enough. Human beings don't live in words. My aching stomach, the scorching image of my family, the sweat, the sound of morose silence, deafening defeat. These weren't just words. You could read them as words, but to live them is something different. To feel them cuts deeper. The knowing, oh, the knowing, to know despair, that all is lost. I laughed before because I didn't want to cry, but the time for crying had come. This was the end of my world, my family's world, my enemy's world, our world. So I sat there with those I had once called enemies, whom I now called friends, and I cried. I cried for the suddenness of it all. Like a deck of cards swept down by the wind, the blue marble that had turned us from rocks to men was about to go back to being rocks. How many endless years, and tiny miracles, and big miracles, and huge, enormous miracles did it take for us to be here? In an instant, all brought so far back into the dirt. We were all walking miracles. We were all the culmination of the blood and sacrifices of those who came before. Our words were not ours alone. They were the spirits of our ancestors that we had inherited. The words they made that lived on through us. Our skin, their skin. Our blood, their blood. Our homes, those that they built for us when we couldn't build them for ourselves. Now all of those sacrifices, all that struggle, was about to come to an end. We would never be able to pay forward those sacrifices. So I cried a deep cry, and I wailed, and I doubled over. When I heard those quiet, desperate chuckles of those around me, my heart screamed, and I wailed louder, because they couldn't see. They knew it was over, but they didn't know what we were losing. Maybe my colleagues did know. Maybe they couldn't stand to feel it and didn't have the strength to face it. God knows the people outside didn't. The revelers who reveled in the chaos, who breathed it in and cheered and jeered and applauded the death of everyone I ever loved. Smiling and waltzing, they glided through the red-tinted streets all the while the world was ready to be split. Why not enjoy yourself for your last day, they said. Because the things we've lost are worth grieving. The people who you love are worth holding. The cradle that brought you up is worthy of the respect of your tears. So I gave myself the satisfaction of tears, which I also owed, and I went home to my family. There in our home we prayed, Then the meteor hit the Earth, and most people died.